Okay, so welcome to today's webinar where we're going to be looking at lesson sequencing and the use of manipulatives in Sway. As I said, I'm Gemma Gwilym, and then joining us today is Virginia from Hillview Primary School. Now, this is coming up to one of our last webinars of the series. Some of you I have seen in previous webinars, such as my Rose and Shine one and Forms. It's great to have you here today as well. Now, the fantastic thing about these webinars is that they're all put on as part of the EdTech Demonstrator Schools programme. Now, for those of you that don't know, United Learning is one of about 86 schools across the UK. We have primary schools, secondary schools, state schools, independent schools, and we've signed up to be able to support this DFE programme by offering lots of advice and support to schools all over the UK. So if you did want a bespoke programme written, we can look at that and seeing what support we can give you. And this gives up to 6 weeks of free peer-led advice. So Virginia is actually supporting schools as well as myself across the UK that aren't just a part of UL. Now, what we do ask during a webinar is that you do mute your mic, and as I said, it is being recorded, so please do feel free to switch your video off if you don't want to be on the screen. I will be monitoring the chat for any questions, and if you do have anything, do pop your question in the chat box, raise your hand, and then we'll be able to answer as many questions as we can. And if we don't answer them all today, we will send out a frequently asked question sheet alongside this webinar. I aim to get the recording out usually by the end of the week, and if not Monday, alongside any materials that Virginia shares with you today. So on that note, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to hand over to Virginia. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Gemma. I'm just going to start sharing my screen with you, which is always the bit that takes the longest, so I do apologise. I'm nearly there. Okay, well, thanks so much, everybody, for coming. It's really nice to see so many people interested in learning a bit more about Sway. So I'll get straight into it. The purpose of today is all about developing our understanding of what Sway can offer us as a learning platform, because it's a fantastic way of bringing that learning that we can't do currently in the classroom to the children in their homes. We're going to talk about how to set up Sways. Obviously, apologies if you've already learned how to do that before in previous webinars, but we'll do a little bit of that just to start off with. We're going to learn how to embed forms, YouTube videos, other videos, links and images into our Sway as well. We'll do a bit of work on screen capture, how we can create videos and embed those into our Sway, and then we'll have a little fun having a look at some extras at the end as well. To add a little bit of interesting stuff to our Sway, because I think that's something that we all want to know how to do, is how to make these lessons come to life so that they're not too flat in front of the children when they're looking at them at home. So I've embedded into this Sway that I've made an FAQ page. This is just another Sway that was sent to me that has got lots of questions and things, answers to questions that you might have in here. So I know Gemma's going to send that out afterwards, so I won't go through that now. But there's a few FAQs in there just about how to build Sways and what those can look like. So in terms of creating our lesson sequences, we can use Sway to make really purposeful lesson sequences over a week or over 2 weeks or over a series of weeks, depending on what kind of curriculum subject you're looking at. And I tend to build mine in a similar way to how a traditional lesson looks. Actually, it's not too dissimilar to your usual planning, but there are different ways to build those sequences. So the first option, what I quite like, is when we have multiple Sways with all of the links embedded within a landing page. So you'd have your Sway landing page. We did this in our school as it was kind of like a newsletter for each year group, with other information on it as well, all of the subjects then. So Sways within Sways, if you see what I mean. It's a bit Inception, that one. With a link that you'd click on for each day's learning, and it works well when there's a lot of content to get through. The thing that's tricky about that is when you're editing it, it can look quite a lot of information, but once you get used to it, it's quite easy to work with. So as you can see here on the right hand side, I've got a grid. I'll show you how to put those in later, with a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So this was English, and I'll show you those in a second, what those would look like. So that can be done really effectively using the stack feature or the grids. Again, I'll show you that in a second, how that would work. And then you link the other sways into the landing page. Just a quick tip though, when you're making sways, make sure that they have clear names at the top. Because when I was making sways in the first lockdown, I think I probably had about easily hundreds and hundreds of them. So you want to make sure that they're organized in a way that you can manage, and naming them is the only way to do that. So make sure that's really, really clear. So your second option for building your sways is to add all the content into a single sway, a bit like this presentation is, where you just scroll through it with a week's worth of learning within it, or 2 weeks, or whatever it is that you're doing, however long your unit is. But just a warning, that can be difficult sometimes for younger children to navigate through. But if there's less content, it works really, really well. So let's have a look at what a sway can look like then. I think that's a really good place to start. So this is one that I wrote, it was a year 5 and 6 English units, going over, I think, 2 weeks, I think. So I always started with a review, because those of you that are not within United Learning might not know so much about Rosenshine principles. It's something that we build all of our lessons on. It will be familiar to you in the structure that you use, I'm sure, in your schools. We always begin with a review of our learning last week, perhaps, or even further back, depending on what you're doing. We have a little bit of audio description for the children. When we're working with children of a variety of abilities and perhaps age groups as well, it's really useful if you're using a lot of text, like you can see here, to make sure that everything's audio described too. I'm going to show you how to do that later. So everything you can see here, I'm going to go over in a little while, with a little caption so that the children know what it is they're listening to. Okay, bit of text about what they're doing. That's probably quite a lot of text there, but it's 5 and 6. And then this one was an English unit using an extract from a book. So here we've got pictures of the extracts with a little video. I actually read some of that aloud, which took quite a long time to do, but is definitely worth it in the long run. It's quite fun to do as well. I organised my lessons into tasks as well. So task 1, task 2, and some modelling videos showing them what to do, with resource at the bottom as well. So you can see it's not too long for a lesson. There's not too much content. It's quite easy to scroll through. And then this is another one that was in the same unit. You can see that we've got a form here at the top for them to have a look at, and then a very similar kind of structure to the lesson, a couple of tasks to do after the review, building on the skills from the days before, and then with some upload links as well. So let's just move that down a little bit. Thinking about what you can put in terms of content, you can be really, really creative with how you do this. And actually, once you learn how to make a sway, there's quite a, well, there's not that many limitations on what you can actually do. It's really fun. So you can insert YouTube videos, but just be mindful of copyright issues there, because that can be a bit of a sticky issue sometimes. So be careful with that one. Book extracts are really great. I've included links here for things as well, so that you can have a look at those. Love Reading for Kids is amazing. It's got hundreds and hundreds of extracts, and actually, if it hadn't have been for this website, I probably wouldn't have been able to plan the English that I did. Literacy Shared is great for short films, if you want to include those, and images as well. I love Once Upon a Picture, if you've not encountered that before. It's got loads and loads of really creative images that are really great for guided reading and writing stimuli as well, for a variety of subjects too, not just English. I'm trying not to come at this from too much of an English perspective. It's my thing, but I'm remembering that we've got lots of people from different backgrounds here as well. So just a few notes. Do consider copyrights. If you're not sure about whether you can use an image or a video or not, do contact the website directly, something that I definitely did a few times. And usually for educational purposes, those websites are very happy for you to use their material, but do credit the source in the caption. If you're really, really not sure about whether you should use something or not, then don't, and try something else. It's not worth the legal troubles actually over using those when we shouldn't be. So it's just something to be aware of, that we can't just take images from, let's say, Google Images and use them. So use Bing if you like. When you try and add an image cards, it does pop up on the right hand side, and I'll show you that in a sec. And that allows Creative Commons images, which you can use for any purpose. Or Pexels is great, or Unsplash. Both of those have free to use stock photos. So any of those work really, really well. If you're using book extracts, I think you can use a maximum of 10% of the total book. But I have just included a link to the government guidance on exceptions to copyright for educational establishments, because there is lots of content that's out there that can be used if purely for educational reasons, and not to be shared widely. Okay, so that's just something to be aware of when you're thinking about what kind of content to put into your sways. So following the Rosenshine principles will make your lessons really successful over a lesson, and also over a sequence of learning too. And let's remember, our aim is always to make really high quality teaching accessible to the majority of children. Obviously, some will have additional needs as well, but without you being there to scaffold and support the learning. So it needs to be as accessible as possible. And sometimes that means aiming perhaps a little bit lower than you usually would in the classroom, because you're not there to support the children in the same way. So a few tips from me. Plan an overview as you would normally do so. So outline the end of unit aim and the steps to get there. I usually did that just on a Word document, just thinking about what I wanted to achieve and how I was going to get there, exactly in the same way as I usually would with the sequence of learning. And that's the best place to start. Just starting off with your first sway for Monday doesn't tend to get the best results, because I found that I usually lost direction when I was doing that. But having an overview meant that I could structure my lessons really, really, really specifically on a key learning skill. So learning tasks look really similar to your usual lesson content, but they're probably going to be simpler than you would usually do, for lots of reasons, mainly because the children may be working completely unsupported on a task, and if it's overcomplicated, they're not going to be successful, and we want the children to be very, very successful in their learning. So short, quick tasks work much more effectively than longer tasks. Usually I didn't put more than 2 tasks into a lesson, sometimes only 1. It really did depend on it, and I wasn't trying to aim for my lessons to be an hour as they usually are. Sometimes they'd only be 40 minutes, and for your children that might be right. Half an hour might be right for them. Okay, so think about what your children need and what's best for them. So you can still provide scaffolds for tasks. We can use teaching videos or sort of image examples of the kind of thing you're looking for. If you want evidence of the children's work, either they can email it to you. That's something that we use in my school if that's something that you've set up, or your children could be directed to an assignment on Teams. I know many of you will have developed your use of Teams perhaps over this most recent lockdown. So your children could be directed to that assignment, or through a document or a form. At this point of the first lockdown, I was using OneDrive to do that, to link to blank documents for children to submit their work to. Or the request files function, which you can also do. Pupils might want to check their work at the end of the lesson so that they can self-assess. So a video modelling the answers or an image of the answers will fulfil this role really well. But remember, when you're trying to make your life easier, if you're going to use a form, that self-marks. So that's really useful. And I've put this at the end. Google is your friend. All of the stuff that I learned to do, I definitely found out by Googling my question. So when I wanted to know how to add images to a form, I Googled it. And there's so much content out there on YouTube or just on Microsoft as well to help you out with different ways of doing the job that you want to. So that is probably the biggest message from this. Google it and it will definitely help you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, first of all, how to set up a sway. Really simple to do. When you first open a new sway, it just looks like this. So you've not really got anything there to be looking at here. I'm going to call this one model sway. And this Moel sway, this is something you'll get used to when you're doing your writing, especially when you're making videos. You have to type things really carefully. So that's your title sway. And you can add a background to it if you want to. You can choose something on there. If you just want something, really bland or just something to pop on the end of it, you can just click background. You see all sorts of fancy things come up. Or you can leave it blank. It's up to you. I'm going to leave mine blank for now. Okay, and that will be the title at the top. So on my top page you saw earlier, I won't go back to it now. You could see the kind of large banner, and that was the one here that you can see. So if I'm going to be adding a text box, really simple. This is the button you always want. So we're adding cards to this. This is the way that Sway's built. It's built through a series of cards. And if I'm adding text, I would just pop it in there. Easy peasy as that. Notice that it comes up with suggested things that you might want to do. These are the ones that we tend to use the most. So that's why they come up first. But if you want to, you can go through the little tabs at the top. But this is the one you want. So we can write some text here. Simple as that. If I want to make it a heading, to make it a larger, basically like this top title card, then I can click on that to make it so, like this, and it just makes it larger. Let's undo that. You can always undo over here, just if you see those arrows there, just like you can in Microsoft programs usually. I can make it bold if I want to. I can italicize it if I want to. I can add bullet points if I like. Really, really easy to work with all of those things. Let me just undo that because we don't want that like that right now. I can make it bigger in my Sway if I want to. At the moment, you'll see it's quite small. If I want to make it larger, this is the way to do it. You just press on that there and it makes it a little bit bigger. And if I play that, you can see that at the moment I've got my title card and a little text card there, and that's it. So to do that, just to repeat, I went to play there. And then when I wanted to go back, you can either press the escape button or go to edit. So that's super, super easy. Let's add an image in. So again, it's come up on my suggested little tab there, but you can just go to media if you want to. I'm going to stick to that. If you want to add an image, that's really easy. Again, over here, as soon as I click that, notice that this Bing search bar pops up for me. So it's still on my previous search. It'll often search for the text that's in the box. So if you've already got text there, it will probably look for that. The images can be a bit variable because they're Creative Commons only. As you can see there, that box is ticked, and we want that box to be ticked really, because it means that we can use any of these images for any purpose. You can add videos here as well, as you can see. I'm not sure I'd ever want to add any of those, but there they are. So I can pop in an image. Let's just use that one. Click on it and then add it. And then there it'll go in like that. And once again, I can make the sizes different. So I can either keep it little, I can make it a bit bigger, or I can make it really large. This one is really massive. I normally find that one's too big for most purposes, but the middle one does really nicely. As you can see, there it is. Okay, really, really simple to do. And another thing that we can do with images, and this is really useful if you are going to be adding in lots of images at once. So perhaps you wanted to make a slideshow, something like that. You can do that. So rather than going to add image, you can go to group. And there's lots of different things you can do with that. Let's get rid of that so we can see it a bit better. It's a bit low down on the page, but that's okay. So group is what we want. Now, there's lots of ways of doing this. You could have a grid if you wanted to. A stack is really nice, and comparison is there where it's got a kind of slidey bar on it. Sometimes see things like that on BuzzFeed. And so, slideshow is the other one. Stack I really like, because what you can do is, let's just add some images to it very, very quickly. Just going to add 2 in. Okay, let's add another. And you notice it kind of groups them together. So they've kind of popped up in a little group stack there. Okay, I can also do it from here actually. Let me repeat that over here. Okay, notice I can drag images as well. So there's quite a lot of different ways that you can do that, and you can take images as well from your own library too. If you save something as an image, you can do that. Now I notice I'm just going to draw those ones up because I've put them in a separate group. Notice how I'm just dragging everything around if I want to change where it is. And look, they've been grouped together now. Okay, so if I show you that as a stack, you can see my original image. And then I've got a little tiny stack of cards here, which you can then flick through. Really useful for vocabulary, or if you do want children to look at lots of images, and they can click on that and see a larger version of it, which is quite nice. You can make it bigger as well, like I said, by using that button we saw earlier. If it ever comes up, let's find it, click on the group up there. You can ungroup them if you want to. You can make them bigger, or you can change the group type. So you could have it as a stack, or you can make them a grid if you like, so that they appear in squares like this. That's what you saw earlier when you saw my lessons. Or you could make them a slideshow. And I'll show you that. It's a really nice, lovely feature. So you can flick through them instead. Okay, so that's really, really good tip for adding images, because you want your sway to look really visually appealing. Okay, I think I'll get rid of that. Okay, so let's have a look at design-wise what we can do with our sway, because that's quite an important feature, and actually getting the design wrong can be a bit of a problem sometimes. Let's just put those pictures back in. I just deleted them. I want them back now because I want to see what they look like. So if we hit the design button, you see we go from the storyline to design. Storyline for editing, design for having a look at the way it looks. This means that you can make a really visually appealing display without needing to know anything about design at all. And you can see down here when I clicked on styles, that's what I did there. Let me get rid of it again. Click on styles. There it is. You can choose a whole range of different templates for the way that your sway looks. So if you don't like the way that mine looks at the moment, you can change it. So this is one way of doing it. And then I could click on that one. I think that's the one I'm using for my main sway. Got one like that. Lots of different things that you can do with fonts. And just be mindful when you're thinking about this for a learning perspective. Sometimes the ones that are the most visually appealing aren't always the best for learning. So this one, for example, I don't like too much. It looks very pretty, but it's a bit busy for the eye. So we really want our learning environment for our children to be as blank as possible in the best possible way, so that their eye is drawn to the learning and not to all of that kind of mess around it. We want them to be nice and clean. So think really, really carefully about your sway. I'd steer clear of anything like that. But you can customize it if you want to. If you want to get into that, you can press on the remix button, which does all sorts of random things to it, changes everything. And you can also play around with the way that the text looks as well. So this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. You can either have one that's vertically oriented, which the children scroll through, which I do really like. It works quite well, and you can't go too wrong with that. You could try horizontal. This isn't my favorite. You click through the buttons here, but as you can see, when you're looking through text, it has multiple slides on at once, and it kind of cuts text in half. So I wouldn't recommend that one. But the slides function works pretty well. So you click through the slides just like you would in a PowerPoint. It works pretty well. Vertical is my favorite though, I have to say. So we'll leave it at that for now. So that's the way we make our sway look appealing. We've added some images in, we've added some text. So let's say we've added quite a lot of text in and we want to add in some sound. Your children will want to hear your voices. They haven't seen you for a long time, so they'll want to hear their teacher talking. So we use the add button again, go to media and audio. And then we can add an audio file. So we could pre-record an audio file. If you've got something downloaded, you could add that on, again, copyright permitting. But if it's something you've recorded yourself, you could just drag and drop it from your browser into there, just drag and drop. It's as easy as that. Or you can record it straight from Sway, which is a really nice feature. Just be aware of your computer's sound quality. I'm using a Surface Pro and the sound quality is pretty good, but I know when I've used my desktop, it doesn't work quite as well and it sounds quite grainy. So just think about that. So when we want to record some sound, we just press record, tells us to get ready, gives you a countdown, and then it lets you record your voice. And you can see that we've got that little pulsation there showing us what we're doing. We've got a 5-minute limit on there. And if I want to pause it, I can pause it and then I can start again. And once I'm happy, I can press stop. And then I get these options. So, excuse me, we can listen to it back if we want to. To be honest, I didn't do that very often because I'm sure you'll agree with me that actually listening to our own selves talking is not always our favourite thing to do. But if you want to listen to it back just to check if it's okay, then please do. You can re-record it if you don't like it, or you can bin it if you really don't want it and start again. If you're happy, add it into your Sway. That can take a little brief moment. It does depend how long the audio sound is. So we'll let that load. Don't worry if it does this for a little while, because that's okay. All right. So I always think it's a really good idea to make sure that there is lots of audio description on your Sway so that your children can hear you speaking, and so that it just mixes it up for them as well. It gives them a different experience of their learning. I do think text accompanying it is a good idea, but you could have a bit of a mix of activities directed through your voice and activities directed through text as well. It depends on the age of your children. I think it's always a good idea to add a caption, or a caption as it's done here. Be aware that Sway doesn't have an autocorrect function, so do check all of your work before you write anything. I quite often used to write in Word first and then copy and paste it into Sway because it doesn't have that function. It will just leave you spelling mistakes as they are, so do check that. Because your caption tells your children, your students, I'm very primary here, referring to them as children. I'm sure some of you are secondary and would not call them children, but there we are. I'd add a caption here because without that, it just looks like a bar to your pupils. So if you've got listen here for today's activities as your caption, they'll know, oh, that's what I have to do. I'll press play. It's just a really nice addition to your Sway, just makes it a bit more interesting and engaging for the children. Okay, so we've had a look at design, we've had a look at how to add in text, we've added some sound as well, we've added images and made a stack. So lots of ideas to be thinking about already is how you can do that. In terms of the sound, a good idea is to use that for spellings and vocabulary. I did that quite a lot because we did spelling sways as well in lockdown 1, and I would record the vocabulary and the spelling words with their definitions too, which was really, really good for testing actually. I used to use it for spelling tests quite a lot, so that's just a little idea. So let's say we want to add a link from another website. So we just add a text card, and then let's say I want to link to, let's say this wonderful geography YouTube video. Okay, so all I have to do is copy and paste the URL. I'm going to show you how to do this in a different way later. Oh, that's the wrong one. Let's get into the right one, shall we? Copy and paste the URL. Now, when I copy it in, it will copy it once I press the space bar as a link, and then the children can click on that link and it will go to it. But I'm sure you agree with me, that looks a bit of a mess. I don't like those long URLs, and I don't think they're very visually appealing for the children. So what we can do is instead add some text. Okay. Highlight the word we want. You can highlight the whole thing if you like. Now, it's 2 options here. You can either press the link button or Control and K together. I'll press link for now. And then this is when you paste your link to the website, whichever website it is that you want them to look at. It could be BBC Bite Size, it could be Oak Academy. And then here we go, much, much neater and tidier than using that big URL link. So that's something to be thinking about, really useful to be doing. And once the children get used to seeing that, I'll just play that for you so you can see it. Here we go. You'll see when you hover over it, it will go to the right place. Okay, and that's how we can identify that hyperlink there. Okay, easy to do. So let's add a form into our work. So I showed you earlier one of my sways, let me go back to it, that had a form at the beginning. I like forms at the beginning of lessons for reviews, and I like them at the end for a review of the lesson too. And as you can see, this one's embedded within my sway. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Forms are your friend. They're amazing, and you can use them for quite a lot of different things as well. So I'm just going to go to Microsoft Forms. As you can see, those of you that are familiar with the Microsoft 365 platform, that we've got all of our links down the left-hand side. So there's Teams that we'll be familiar with. There's SharePoint, which lots of you will use. There's Sway, and there's Forms. I normally just type it into the toolbar and it goes straight there because I use it so much. And you can see that I have millions and millions and millions of forms because I use them quite a lot, and I use them a lot at the moment. So if I want to make a new form, and apologies if you know how to do this, I'll try not to dwell too much on the logistics of making the form. I go to new quiz. Let's let that load. It always takes such a long time when you're trying to show people how to do it, and it works perfectly when you're doing it yourself. But here it will pop up in a sec. There we go. So I've got my quiz here. Let's call it quiz for fun. I don't normally put a description in, to be honest, because as many of you all know, the children tend not to read them, and it's normally pretty obvious what they have to do with it. So I tend to put the text into the sway rather than in here. But an idea for this bit, you could put the text in. Let's say you were using this for a guided reading or a comprehension activity. You could copy and paste the text into this part instead, which works pretty well. I've done that before, so that when the children are looking at, let's say, a comprehension, they're not having to skip between multiple windows, because younger children find that quite hard. And if they're watching on an iPad, or if they're doing it on a Chromebook, it's really hard for them to see. You want them to really only have one window open at a time. So to add questions, super easy. You've got several options here as what you want to do. I normally begin with the name. It's a good idea to get them to write their name on here. And I normally ask them as well to just put their first name and perhaps their initial as well, just GDPR things, so that you don't end up with lots of names in there, full names anyway. Make it required, so they have to do it, so that they can't do anything, leave it all blank. Okay. Now, if I want to duplicate a question, let's say I really like the format of the question, I want to duplicate it, I can just click copy question and it duplicates it. Okay. If I want to reorder questions, I can use the up and down arrows just to move them about. I can do quite a lot with it. If I want to get rid of it, just delete it. So choice questions, in my opinion, work the best because they've got a forced choice over what they choose. So multiple choice, option 1, option 2, you can add options if you want to. It works really well, again, for younger children who aren't so hot on typing. Because the thing with forms is, if children don't type the answer and they don't spell it right, it will often mark it wrong. And they find that quite annoying, understandably. So choice questions work really well. Over here, as you can see, you can add messages to children. So let's say, oh, try again on that one, perhaps. You can get rid of an option, or you can mark it as correct. Make sure that you do that before you send it out to the children, because again, a mistake I have made is not choosing the correct answer. You can make it required or not required, so you could differentiate there, because your most challenging questions could not be required, whereas most of them, the sort of less challenging questions, are required there. You can give points to a question if you want to, which again, nice and motivational. And you can make them multiple choice if you want. So if you want to have more than one answer, there we go, that's how you do it. It works a treat for guided reading. I love it for guided reading, it works so well, because you can do so many things with those questions. Now, here are your text questions. So as I said, you have to type this correctly to get it right, because you have to add the answer in. And let's say that the answer is orange. Great if they type it correctly, but we know that children are quite unreliable with typing. So they might spell it like this. Oh dear, but that's okay, because you said it's okay, you said it's a correct answer. They could say all sorts of things. I will say it's not case sensitive though, so if you type it in, let's see, if I just do this, it won't do anything because it's already got that there. It isn't case sensitive. I have to say, I always try and think of every way a child can answer the question, and I always get it wrong. So just be mindful of that, and you might have to go in afterwards and mark their questions right if you want to. You can add images to questions if you want to. Again, really useful if you're doing a bit of text work. So if you want little bits of text, sort of AKA kind of Key Stage 1 SAT style reading papers, you can add little questions. You can add images to it if you want to. You can even add videos too. You can do quite a lot with it, which is really quite fun. Oh, let's get rid of that. So here's my finished quiz. Really happy with it. I can change the theme if I want to. Let's do pencils. I like pencils today. You can play around with those though. Quite fun to do. Let's get rid of you. You can preview it if you want to, or you can just share. So let's share it. So we want to set it to anyone can respond, because we want any of the children to be able to do it, whether they have a Microsoft account or not. Now we can either link to it in the same way as we did earlier when I added that link from YouTube in. We could use a QR code that they can scan, not super useful for a sway, or we can embed it. We can email it out as well, but let's embed it. So here we get an embed code. Let's copy that. I'm going to go back to my sway. I'm going to add in a new box. And this time I'm going to go to Add Media, Embeds, and we get an embed card here, so you can see slightly different. And I'm going to paste that link in. Once again, do check that anyone can respond, because you don't want it to be just set to people in your organisation, or the children won't be able to do it. And then it will that screen will go blank, which is fine. You can have it as its original size. You can change the sizing on there, and then when we go to play, it will come up with the form there, as you can see. And if you want to make it bigger or smaller, then great, and then they can submit it from there. Works really well, and it works really, really well for reviewing, learning, and just quick quizzing, and it marks itself, which is something that we absolutely love. Okay, so moving on from that, let's add a video, let's say from YouTube. So as I said earlier, be aware of kind of copyright issues here, but usually if you're using something for your own school only and not sharing it, and it's for educational purposes only, and not for any kind of commercial reasons, you're normally okay, especially with educational resources, like anything from Bite Size. But if you're not sure, you can ask permission. So let's say we want to add in a YouTube video. So I'm going to go back to my lovely geography one here. Now, instead of using the URL, I'm going to come down to share. So I'm clicking on that. And then we get similar options as we did before. We can share it in lots of different ways, but we want this one. We want to go to embed. So you then get a big old long embed code. You can try and manipulate the time that the video starts. So let's say you want the children to watch from 10 seconds in, and finish at a certain time. You can do that. If I'm honest, I've never managed to get it to work. But you can try it out and see if it works. You can also allow the children to control it, which you do probably do. You want them to be able to pause and play and such. Then we copy it, little copy, and then pop back to my sway. Let's add it in, same way. So ads, media, embeds, paste the embed code, click off it, and then here it will be, and you can see it there. It's lovely. So change the size. It's normally a bit small when it's on the smallest setting. Let's play and have a look at it. So I've got my form there. Scroll down, and there you can see the video in there too. Just a note, do add a little, just acknowledge the source of the video as well, is always a good idea, because you can add a caption here. So you can write credits, video credit, or something like that to acknowledge the source. Go ahead.
Virginia, we've got a couple of people who have said their videos frozen. It's working on both my devices at the moment.
It might be a case of leaving and coming back again. That's normally what we say to the children on their Teams calls.
If anyone else has a problem, please do write in the chat box. Thank you, Virginia. This is great so far.
No problem. Did you say you can still see it, Gemma?
Yeah, so I'm on both devices and I'm still in.
You're all good. I'll keep going. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so we've added videos from YouTube. We've done all sorts of things with that. So let's say we want to add a video of our own. That's something that we definitely want to be doing, because again, the children want to see your voice. They want to hear what you've got to say. So there's lots of different ways of doing that. Now, I've made a different screen to show you this, because I use a piece of software called, I'll just go to it here. It's called Screencast-O-Matic. It's a free piece of software. You just need an email address to sign up to it, and you can use a bit of screen recording software there that, as you can see here, just records as much of the screen as you want to. Now, I know a lot of you might use PowerPoint to do that, and what I've shown you here is a way of doing that. Let's say I've recorded this little PowerPoint here, and I've recorded some narrations, or I want to record myself narrating. I can do that here by going to record slideshow and record from current slide, or record from the beginning, and then you can export that as a video. I will say I honestly never got that to work, so I found this other bit of software which I found to be a lot better. So let me show you a picture of that, because when I share it, you don't end up seeing it. Or we can see Gemma in the corner of that one. That must have been, you must have been there when I took that screenshot, Gemma. So this is what it looks like. Here is my PowerPoint. As you can see that I've changed the dimensions so it doesn't have my whole screen, because I don't want them to be able to see all this stuff up here. I just want them to be able to see my teaching. So I've amended the screen size, and as you can see there, all you have to do is click the record button, have the narration on, And that's it, really. You can change it so that you can switch it around to record you if you want to, but that's all there is to it, really. The one thing you can't do, because it's a piece of free software, is you can't cut anything. If something goes wrong, you do have to start again. And I found that out the hard way when I turned narration off and had to begin again. But once you're happy with it, what you can do then is, as you can see, it's a bit small, I apologise for that, but you can change the file name, you can change where it's saved to, and you can have your cursor highlighted as well, because you definitely want that on so that you're not waving your mouse around and the children can't see it. And then you can just publish it and then insert it as you like. So I found that worked really well, but there are other ways of doing it. There are other programs available that do that screencast software, but I found it to work better than PowerPoint. So if I want to add my video, again, all I need to do, press the plus, media, and then video, and then it will give me a bit of a space for that. It will come up with all these Bing ones. Let's get rid of that because we don't want those. We want our own. And I'm just going to drag in a video I made earlier. You won't be able to see it, but I'll just drag it in if it lets me do anything with it. Sorry. So there we go. That's what I wanted. I'm going to drag it in and then I'm going to insert it, and you can see that it's just popping itself in. Sometimes it tries to make itself a new card and I'm never quite sure why. I'm just going to check that that's worked. I'm going to try that again. I don't think it liked it when I dragged it through. Let's try that one more time. There we go. Should work now. So you can see it's gone green. Again, sometimes it pops through in a different place, which is a bit strange, but it does work, I promise you. And then it will come up with a video. If I show you one earlier that I did down here, you can see that that then will play through. You can see, I'm not sure if you could hear my voice there or not, but there we go. And then there's one here. I'll show you another one. Hopefully. Then what I did later on was I used my stylus on here. Again, I'm quite lucky to be using a computer that allows me to do that, but you can do it with text boxes as well. It just takes a little bit longer and you might have to pause every now and again to set the next one up. I quite liked using the handwriting facility, to be honest. It worked really, really well for me. But again, when you make a mistake, it doesn't matter. That's one of my top tips, in fact, for doing this. If you go wrong, keep going, because it really doesn't matter if you make a mistake. We all make mistakes all over the place in the classroom, so that's not a problem. But as you can see, it's just popped itself in there, and then that's how we insert our video. It's really easy to do. Okay, so the last thing, in fact, let me just return to my original Sway. I had some tips, top tips for doing screen capture, because I know it's something that probably you might be feeling maybe a bit nervous about, because it's putting yourself on the line perhaps more than anything else is. But it's probably the most valuable part of your teaching, because it brings your classroom practice into a Sway, and there's nothing that can replace that classroom practice, but this does a good job. So my best tip is make it really conversational, just like you would in the classroom, because your pupils do want to hear your voice. And you can hear me, probably hear me a little bit on that bit. I was just talking to the children like I would talk normally. And I recorded lots of these lessons for all of the children all up and down the country. And I just made it the same, like I knew them. Don't worry if you make a mistake. Don't listen back to your videos. There isn't any point. You won't like it. Just leave it as it is. Try and keep your videos quite short and sweet, because they're really big files, so they do take quite a long time to load. Especially going through the PowerPoint way, as I showed you earlier. If you are able to use a stylus, then that just works really, really well. Otherwise, just type it in and do record in a really quiet room and check your sound quality. So, last thing I want to talk to you about today is a really cool little addition to your Sways. And that is something called Flippity, which I discovered through my kind of just searching for extra things to put into my Sway. There are other ways of doing this, I'm sure, but this is one that I found that I really liked. Works through Google, so you do need a Google account to do it, and your templates will save to OneDrive as well, so something to bear in mind. But it's got a whole range of different things you can do. So you can make flashcards with it, you can do name generators with it, you can do matching games, you can do manipulatives, which is sort of sorting activities. You can do loads, and it's quite fun to play with, actually. like I said, there are other things, and you may well have encountered other bits and pieces that you can use. So I'm going to show you one that I like the best, which is this one, which is the sorting activity. And I probably use this the most, with the exception of the flashcards. So you can see this is something I used for geography. And I had, well, actually it was English, but it was linked to our geography work, something we did quite recently in a lesson, actually. So on the left-hand side, they're quite long, which is why they go over the cell width. I've got all of the things that the children were sorting. They were sorting information under subheadings, basically here. So I took loads of factual information from a non-chronological report and put it all here. So all of those there. Now on this spreadsheet, you have to put your headings underneath on the left. So they're all in terms, but I like to make the headings bold so I can see the difference between them. And you give them a colour on the right. Notice these ones at the top don't have a colour. There's no colour there. There's nothing in there. Okay, so what we do with that is we go to File, Publish to the web. It's really simple to do and it's really fun. And then, as you can see, I've already published this one. So it will come up with a button saying Publish. It'll ask you if you want to publish it, and then you do. And it will keep republishing when changes are made. We don't want this link. We don't want that one there. We want to close that. And then we want to go to the link here, get the link here rather. Let's open it up. And then we want this one. If you click on it and then click the copy button, it will copy it. And let's have a look. I'm just going to paste it in. And I did this yesterday and it took ages to load. Hopefully it won't today. So it will go to a lovely little sorting activity. And as you can see, and just teach the children to pull up those coloured terms. You can see that there's my blue and my red and so on and so forth, orange or whatever it was. Pull those up to the top and then they can sort them. Now, there's no way of saving this really. They can screen grab it if you want, or it can just be a really quick activity, just something different, because we don't need evidence of every single thing that the children do. It's just something for them to do that's a little bit different. And they can actually change the way it looks here as well, which you can do too, but you don't really need to be honest. You can do Venn diagrams with it like that. You can do loads of different things with it, which is rather nice. You can do sorting like that, loads of things. So do play with it. But the other one that I use probably the most is flashcards. I use that an awful lot for spelling, with the spelling on one side and the meaning on the other, and we do that quite a lot for sight reading actually as well. But as you can see, there's lots of different things you can do, like matching, which I quite like too. Okay, so I think I've come to the end of everything I had to say this afternoon. I do hope that that has given you some inspiration for what kinds of things you can do to make your sways more exciting for the children, and giving you some ideas of things you can play around with as well, because believe me, it can be really, really fun to have a go at manipulating these sways and making them work for you. So, and you'll definitely get better at it as you go along. So I'm going to unshare my screen.
Okay, Virginia, we've got our first question. Do you embed your Flippity game in this way?
Oh, do you know what? When we were going through this yesterday, you asked me to do that, and I completely forgot to show everyone as well today. Let me do that now. Let me reshare my screen.
2 people asked that, so I'll mute myself and let you reshare.
No problem. Thanks, everybody, because you've reminded me, because it's the one thing I've forgotten to do now twice in a row. But that's okay. So back to my sway. If I want to embed that link, so I just use the same link that I used before. So when I had my, there we go, that link, that's the link that you need. So I've still got it copied. Let me just check that I have. Let's copy it in. So you can't embed them as like you could with a form. It doesn't quite work like that, but you can just add the link in. So let's add another text card. So we go. It's being super slow now because I've just started sharing and it never likes doing that. So you could just put something like try this activity here and highlight it, link to it, and one day it will come up with the box that I want. Copy and paste it in. And there you go. and then it will link to it straight away. And if you want to, you could put a little image of it, a screen grab of it, if you wanted, for the children as well, so they know what they're looking for. But it is something definitely to try in class as well when we manage to come back. I really love it for particularly that sorting activity, because it's just, I know what it's like to have to cut all of those little pieces out when you're trying to do it in the classroom, and actually that's quite a good way around it. I'll keep my screen shared in case I have forgotten to say something else. Have we got any other questions, Gemma?
Yeah, can you now click play to show what it looks like now, please?
Of course, yes. It'll be a bit of a mess, I'm afraid, because I haven't really thought about the order of anything that I've put in. But yes, absolutely. Let's have a look at it and see how it's turned out. Again, the design is probably hideous as well, but we can play with that in a second. So it always loads. You'll see those little dots that are kind of coming through at the beginning, and it takes a little while to load. And when you do updates, it will always do that kind of the little dots going through at the top. You can see it there. You can see my text. You can see my form. You can see my little video there, which I think didn't upload as a video, but that's okay. Perhaps it was an image. We've got my YouTube video, my links, my little sound bit, images, and then I ended up with a slideshow at the end, didn't I? So what you can do, if you look at it and then you're not happy with it, just go back to editing, and then you can either play around with the design again and think about how you want the design to look, or you can just mess around with the sizes, because sometimes you look at things and they're too small and you need to make them bigger. Play around with the sizing. You will find yourself going in and out of play quite a lot. Okay, so that's definitely something to think about, but you'll get used to the way that that you like it. And you can save sways as templates as well. If you've got one that you want to reuse over and over again, you can save it as a template too. So I think I can show you that here. You might see how many a hideous number of sways that I have made here. I did get a bit sway happy in the summer. So what you can do, it says start from a template there, and it will load one of these days. But what you can do is just save your sway as a template, and then it will keep it. But you can duplicate them as well if you want to. It will come up eventually. There's quite a few there. It will come up with those three little dots there, and then you can. Again, I'm so sorry how slow it is. You can either copy it, make a copy of it, or you can link to it there, or you can just play it through. So you can duplicate them as well if you really like a particular sway that you've done.
Thank you for that, Virginia. Lisa's asked about, can we use sways in Seesaw? So I said yes, because the great thing about a sway is that when you share it, and if you do anyone can view, it's then a link that you can paste anywhere. So I've just said that in our early years classes, we've been pasting their sways to their Tapestry accounts, as well as delivering their live lessons on Teams. They do have a sway because they're finding the sway easier to navigate than a Teams page at that age.
Yes, and it's something to get parents used to as well. They're quite easy for parents to navigate, and children too. So yeah, use them in any context that you're using in your school. They're quite sort of user-friendly in that way. And
you don't need a login for them to access it. By having the view, anyone can view, it means that you don't have to log in. Everyone can access it straight away. Anyone else got any questions at all? Okay, well, thank you very much, Virginia, for that. I'm just going to go through. So with these slides, these are going to be sent out to you. Within the slides, I have included a little sway about sway. So when you click on this link, and I will share that in the chat box in a second, it kind of gives you a few more ideas, building what Virginia said about how other schools have used sway and ways that you can use it post-lockdown. We do have 2 more webinars coming up, and I have included my Twitter feed there, because any of you, I think there are a couple of people on this call who do follow me on Twitter. You'll see I do like to share a few tips and tricks and the latest webinars that we're producing. So please do feel free to email me or to follow me on Twitter. We've also got in here, we have our own YouTube page. So I think all of our webinars have now been uploaded to the YouTube page. If you have missed any, please do go back and see them. And also on our EdTech demonstrator page, we've got handy guides like the Sway one that I posted earlier. Finally, as I said at the beginning, this is part of a DFE EdTech demonstrator program. So if after watching this you think that actually you'd like to have a little chat with one of us or look at any support that we can give your school, it is free. It is up to 6 weeks. The program is due to end at the end of March. So we're more than happy to help as much as we can. Please do just contact us. And if you do have any further questions, Virginia and I will stay on the call for a bit. But I am going to stop sharing and stop recording now.